I got a question for you. You mentioned RBI is probably the best technology that's been put in place over the years. Have you come across any that are maybe a little too overblown or overused when maybe they shouldn't have been?
No, no,
No?
can't
Okay.
say that I handled that.
Okay.
I say some of your biggest struggle with RBI is your management personnel.
Oh, I'm sorry, not RBI. I'm saying a tech in general, any technology that you see people using where you're like, I don't know if I trust that.
Oh, oh yeah. Okay. Well, I'm not guided way. I'm not
Yeah.
real. I'm not real impressed with that. Guided way was a good screening tool. I mean, it gives you an indication that something's out there, but you got to do a lot of follow up.
Yeah.
And if you think you're going to use guided waves underground, no. The sound attenuates into the dirt so fast, it's just not a viable option. So
Okay.
guided wave was, yeah, I'm not impressed with that. I've never been a real big fan of acoustic emission either.
That's what I was trying to get.
Yeah,
But it's so split there.
yeah. You know, they said, okay, our sensor said between in this 4 foot square area, you might have a spot right over here. That I'm like, I like a little more precise and more exacting science than that.
It's so, yeah. It's like Frank Furillo at Mobile used to say that it's not what AE tells me there's an indication here and I go and I find something that bothers me. It's all the other places where it didn't tell me there weren't any indications.
Right.
Because it's so hard to tie it to fracture mechanics. We learned that in the perf projects at API many years ago. And yeah, in perfect laboratory conditions, maybe. We had some success. There was a Dr. Weaver, I think, at University of Illinois. Dave Wang was the chairman of that, or the project manager for that particular perf project when he was at Shell. But it's just so dang hard. And I've worked with AE since my early days at Monsanto. And you have to use it. It has its applications, but you really need to be realistic with yourself about what it's telling you and what it's not telling you.
Exactly. I'm not smart enough with it to really speak great intelligently now. So if you tend to own in on the things you're more comfortable with, and
Right.
there's a lot of other things we can have than that.
Mhm. Yeah.
What do you think about these technologies that are out there today? The aerial drones that can fly over equipment and take, photographic records of everything and then compare it over time to look for changes and stuff. What do you think of that? The value of that?
There's some value in it. I know there's drones out there that'll actually take UTs for you too. I mean, as a little coupler, that puts a transistor and shits a UT for you. And I think the drone stuff is going to develop more and more as we go along. It's kind of in an infancy stage, if you will. It may become an inspection method of choice in the future. Who knows? People can drop a drone going down a tower. You can drone fly in between tower trays and go over and shoot UTs and whatever, and do all the inspection for you. Keep people out of harm's way. It's probably coming.
Where do you think we are and how much you can trust? Well, let me back up. So, back in the late 80s, and mid 80s, we started using tools like automated UT. And we started using them to look for things like HIC and SOHIC and putting multiple transducers on there, to go in like 90-degree different, directions so that we get a good coverage. And I thought it showed a lot of promise. I thought we had some really good progress with some of those burst tests that the industry did and stuff, and comparing, what did the AUT say? Did it find everything? So forth and so on. Do you think, well, and back up too. So I think our vision back in those early days, like the early 90s and stuff, is if we got good enough at on-stream inspection, that should really go a long way, of course, with some other things to help us avoid surprises during a turnaround. It's like we should really know what there shouldn't be much discovery work, right? Do you think non-intrusive inspection has matured to the level yet that most owner operators are using it and using it responsibly today. I mean,
I think so. And that's something I push a lot, whether it be, with API stuff or with the company I'm helping out with now. And especially with turnaround preparation stuff, if you can do external non-intrusive inspection, whether it be using phased array, and even checking for cracking, from the OD cracking, and you can use robotics for that with the trilateral machines that they have. There's, geckos doing that. Use that technology at the beginning of your work scope for a turnaround. You've got this much discovery. It's huge. There's potential there that could get you. You need, before that turnaround hits a year out, you need to start shrinking that discovery down to where your discovery is minimal, because it's inspection's responsibility to limit the amount of discovery and limit the amount of exposure during a turnaround. Because last thing you want to do in the middle of 2 days or 2 weeks into the turnaround, say, oh, we found this and this pressure vessel, now you need to replace it. You could have found that 6 months before.
Right.
This is just my opinion. If your discovery increases your turnaround work scope by more than 10%, I think inspection is fair, because there's so much you have at your hands. I try to push the inspectors to get money from the turnaround group ahead of time. Say, hey, in order to get this cracking inspection done, let us do phased array 6 months ahead of time, and I'll do as many welds as I possibly can just to shrink that amount of discovery.
Right.
That limits your work scope. Get it off the list. We think it can do that way. And whether it be automated UT, phased array for, find those thin areas beforehand, find the cracking beforehand, whatever.
Have you tried going back and looking at comparing the amount of discovery to the number of IOW excursions?
Not a heck of a lot.
I know people having robust IOW programs is still starting to happen. I did hear somebody just recently say, if your IOWs, if you have a good handle on them, you know what they are and you manage them, there really shouldn't be that much going on. What do you think about that?
That's good, as long as you have a company that is following your IOWs and they let you know what's going on. But there's so many refiners and owner operators out there, they're not that sophisticated.
Yeah.
It looks different. They're geared to that stuff.
Yeah. It was an interesting comment. It was somebody that was being challenged on RBI and having a backstop on their RBI. And if you get your IOWs in check and you're managing them and you know what they are, why do you? Like, it was more of a thought experiment, right? Let's just talk through this. Why would you need that? And it was like,
right.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That kind of makes sense.
Yeah. Those IOWs are important. And there was a time when we found out, a couple months later, it's, oh, by the way, we blocked in the filter on the crude overhead line, for 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah.
So next thing we're out there checking and we got it back going now. I said, yeah, but you went 2 or 3 weeks without filter at all. Well, what they had done is they'd taken like 5 years of life off the line in a little bit of time.
Yeah.
And it's hard to explain to folks, you got to take care of your equipment. And when something goes down, let your inspectors know what's going on. Another thing that I think is really important for inspectors is when you're assigned a process unit or 2 or 3 or whatever, those inspectors need to get out and know the operators. Go to the units, visit them, talk to them, say, hey, what's going on in your unit today? What's good, bad, and different. Get that relationship going, because pretty soon their operators are going to realize that inspectors are working hand in hand with operations to try to keep that unit safe. And once you build that trust, the operators say, hey, McLane, a couple weeks ago, we had this going on. Do you think you might want to check over here, check over there? Or, we had some excursion here, because they'll let you know before they go, let management know, say, hey, we had a little problem over here. They'll let, because you're working hand in hand together. So it's important for inspectors to get that, inspector operator relationship, just like it is inspector welder relationship, maintenance guy relationship, turnaround guy relationship. You've got to be able to put on a lot of hats and relate to a lot of folks.
Yeah.
And that way they talk to you.
Yep. And the other, well, let me ask you this, Terry, because I know, the education could go both ways. I'll make a comment first when, I wouldn't say it was back about 20 years ago. We were doing some of that work in Illinois at one of the refineries there. And what was so encouraging is that one of the inspectors who was on the RBI team took it upon himself to put a schedule together to go deliver training to the operators and of the heaters, because they wanted them to understand how much a little temperature difference can impact the remaining life of those heater tubes, and a lot around that. So that was I totally agree with what you're saying. But going back to the non-intrusive inspection thing again for a little bit, is I think the vision always for a lot of us was that, hey, if we do a good job of the damage mechanisms review, the creation of the corrosion control document, there within that should be a collaboration between the metallurgist and the inspector, because the inspector needs to understand where he needs to be looking and what he needs to be looking for. And sometimes it's hard to nail down corrosion materials metallurgical engineer and have them, really tell you is it this elbow? Is it that? Is it this? But that should be a collaboration. And I thought, well, if that process is working well and your IOWs are working well, your CCDs telling you where you got your hot spots or where the issues are in that unit as you step through each system, right? If I've got all that going for me, I'm thinking, man, if I've got that and I'm strategically using non-intrusive inspection, I should be doing a lot to mitigate or limit the amount of discovery work in the turnaround. That ideally you'd say, hey, look, we know we're going to have to replace these 2 can sections. We know we're going to have to pull this bundle and so forth and so on in advance. I think that's still the vision, and I'm hoping to see more people taking advantage of non-intrusive inspection. It'd be interesting. I don't think Solomon does this, but it'd be interesting to find out people's turnaround performance versus their mechanical integrity or their non-intrusive inspection program. How much money are they spending on non-intrusive? Because the other thing about non-intrusive inspection we haven't even talked about is if you're able to do that and actually not get in that tower or get in that drum or send other people inside of there, or let's minimize the amount of people that go in and out of there, because that causes risks too, right?
It does. Every time you shut it in, you got cause risks.
Yeah.
There's risks involved. And that non-intrusive inspection, that's the way to go. The more that you can do, the better up you are. And you're right. When you talk about CCDs, back in the day, we didn't have corrosion control documents.
Right.
And that should be the inspector's best friend. That should be besides the code book, that should be his other bedtime reading document to make sure that what the heck is going on.
I agree.
Even on the operations side, right? Operators knowing it, that gets into, right?
The operators know what the corrosion control document is. They can bring up and say, hey, this is an area where we need to look at. We had an excursion over here. We didn't, we lost temperature up here. We got increased temperature. I mean, there's so many factors. It's all part of, that collaboration with everybody.
That's a best practice though, right? I mean, that's not the normal.
No, places I've been to, they don't have that luxury.
Yeah.
We're getting there. I mean, it's going to be a long time coming.
So probably CCD, I guess I don't want to lead you on this question, but which of RBI, CCD, and IOW, which would you say is the most important?
Well, man, I'm going to say the CCDs. Your corrosion control document first, and then RBI, and then the IOW. I can talk to operators. If you got a good open relationship with your operators and your process engineers, you can pick up a lot of IOW stuff and go that way. But knowing where to look with the CCD, that's really important. But RBI is just such an excellent tool. I mean, if you can combine your RBI with your CCDs, and then you happen to Cadillac it out and do RBI, CCD, and IOW, you're sitting in tall cotton there.
Have you seen many plants where they didn't put the CMLs in the right locations?
Yeah. What's the right location? Yeah. I mean, that's the real question. I mean, there's some places you get that, but as we all know, most plants have too darn many CMLs, and some of them are not in the right spot. But It's CMLs are a tough deal. I mean, you can have 10,000 of them, but in one process, but really how many of them are telling you the truth? Maybe 1,000 of them, 500 of them. It's not all of them. I mean, there was a facility, I think Jim McVeigh did a study years ago out of Tesoro. Don't quote me on it, but I think he said like 93% of the CML were not telling anything.
Falls in line with what we've seen and
yeah,
anecdotally others have seen.
Yeah. And then when I was at board, we did CML optimization, and we went through and we were looking at all the CMLs, and if they didn't show a deviation of more than three mils, we got rid of it.
Yeah.
It's not helping you. It's costing you money. Because there was a while when I was budgeting stuff, I would figure for every CML, you're looking at $50.
Yep.
So that's significant.
Yes,
yeah, when you got 500,000 of them in the plant.
Yeah.
And you're looking at 100,000 every year.
Yeah.
Good luck.
Yeah, it adds up pretty quick. And you got to remember, in the inspection, we're a game of percentages. And that's hard for a lot of people to understand. They think, well, you're doing 100% inspection on everything. I said, no, we only do a small snippet. Like I say, we're a game of percentages. Even when your original fabrication, you're only 5%, 10%. Finding that needle in the haystack, sometimes I'll take luck over precision ain't that.
So why not RT everything?
Well, sure you can, but you still got to bankrupt your company.
Would you, though, if you were to go through and optimize and only do the CMLs that are showing active corrosion and just switch those all to RT?
Oh, yeah, you can do that. Belongs to 6-inch diameter below. You can get 8-inch diameter below, but once you start getting over 8 inch, you're below too much. But you can get 6-inch and below, you can get darn good readings. And in fact, if I was a chief still, I would mandate that anything 6-inch and under would have to be RT, period.
Yeah. Yeah. So your run and maintain would all switch over to RTs?
On 6-inch and under, definitely.
Yeah.
As opposed to shooting that one little spot, I get a big area.
I mean, that's still a decent percentage of your piping that's 6 and under.
Jets.
I mean,
and the plant that I'm helping right now, that's on their piping, it's almost 90%.
I believe it. Yeah. I mean, that's the difference. Right. That's I had somebody, they're like, oh, we were bidding some work or something. And they were like, oh, it's a small plant, whatever, it's this. And I got into it. I was like, yeah, it's a small plant, but that just means the volume of the equipment itself is smaller. There's still the same number of pieces of equipment. It's just a little bit smaller size and diameter and stuff. So
yeah.
I mean, you still got all the same pipes, all the same equipment. So
exactly. And it's exactly, that's where it's at. And when you get back into cost, I mean, it's, then you come into another phase, and then, you got to take your successes where you can. And that's where I pushed a lot of say, develop a saves list. So when you go out and you shoot that RT and you find something and you get it repaired before it shuts down or before it fails, that's a save. Okay, on line such and such, we found it before it failed. Now I go back to my process. If my planning got group would say, okay, if this line would have failed, I would have had this line down for 2 weeks. It'd cost this much throughput. I could have had a fire and explosion. And what I would calculate out is for this line, if I lost process unit for 2 weeks at X amount of barrels a day, it's $500,000 a day. Here's my savings. Now you count your save that, and pretty soon you can go back to your management and say, look, over the last year, we had X amount of $1 million of save because we found all these items before they failed, and we got a repair before they failed. There's your justification for your inspection.
Do you find management accepts that and appreciates that?
Yeah, right. I had a prime example of that when I was in Cheyenne. In our Alky unit, when we did our 100% component profile X-ray program, we documented $16 million worth of saves.
Wow.
And that's just throughput. That's not counting fire rebuild, equipment replacement. That was strict throughput.
Yeah, that was just like, okay, if the worst thing that happened is we had the leak and now we got to fix it, right? What's that going to cost in lost product or production opportunity or and stick with it? Because you can't argue with that. They could argue with, well, how do you know someone would have got hurt? And how do you know that it would have found an ignition source? That doesn't matter when you do it at this side. It's hard to argue with it. So like you said, that number could easily be multiplied times 100 if something bad happened.
Yeah, I didn't take credit. I just said, here's the fact. Here's your throughput. I got this right from the planning guy. He said, we'd have lost this much money, X amount of days, because you say it's going to be down for 2 weeks. And that's true, because I know the maintenance and I know exactly what it would probably take, to replace a line from point A to point B. How long to be down.
And that's the ROI they got because of their inspection program and their inspectors.
Yeah. Well, we can lay that in front of somebody and say, like we did. I said, $16 million of saves just in the HF Alky over at Cook. We did that in a year and a half. Just by that program, one program.
What program was it again? Sorry.
It was the 100% component inspection in our HF Alky.
Yeah. Okay.
I transferred that too to all. You can transfer that to all your other units. Any other unit you have. You're doing stall bore inspection, you're doing CMI, and you find it before it fails. How much did you save the company?
Yeah.
Because you found it and got it repaired before it failed.
Yeah.
Document it, because
We have to be good at doing that. We need to do that.
and that's a cool thing. And then, I can show anybody how to do it. Pretty simple and easy.
It's just arithmetic. At what point did it take for you to start thinking that way? Because at some point, right, you go from thinking about not fighting against management, but there's a different mindset. So what did it take for you to get to that point of understanding, like, hey, this is how I need to try and present things?
I was a chief inspector for 29 years at 2 different facilities. And when you're fighting every year for a budget, because I used to have to put the budget together for a long time. I always, for the most part, you justify your budget to the nth degree. When you start going in with management and say, well, Clay, why do you want $300,000 to do profile RPs in this year? I said, because I'm looking for this, and this. And then here's why. And if you start documenting everything you need to do it, and you say, this is why the industry is doing it. We're going to do this profile RT program because this is industry best practice, and we're behind the or I'm going to do X amount of CMLs or profile RTs on UT because that's required by code. And if you justify every single dollar you asking for by your code requirement or industry best practice, it makes it really hard for them to cut your budget. Then, and all of a sudden they're saying, you know what? I'm going to give you all the money you're asking for because you're going above and beyond to justify every line item in your budget. And they'll go searching for somebody else to cut their budget. Yeah, that's the way it is. I could tell you, it got to the point where 99 times out of 100, they left my budget alone. That's because I justified everything.
Yeah, it's important.
It's hard to argue because when you want to start coming and cutting your budget, say, okay, as long as you understand, if you cut my budget, here's what's going to suffer. And they say, oh, wait a minute, maybe I don't want to do that. We'll go find somebody else.
I've talked with folks about walking into RBI inspection plan meetings. Or I guess coming out of inspection plan meetings, I've talked to people about walking into turnaround meetings and having those what ifs already available. If you're going to cut this, here's what is going to come up next. If I can't do 100%, I can't get that A level inspection credit. Here's what that means. I'm going to have to go back in 3 years instead of 8 years.
That's right.
Yeah. And,
whether you're justifying your budget or you're justifying your turnaround, it's the same. Yeah, I need to go into this piece of equipment because it's code required because of this, and this. I'm looking for all this different damage, and here's why. It makes it easy. They can't argue. That's the one cool thing about RBI. So you bring your list in, and you have X amount of items to say, well, here's based on RBI. Here, and you're going to cut everything out. We're going to do everything from medium high to high. It makes your list real easy, and you got your justification. They're black and white, so they can't hardly cut that. Well, then all of a sudden you're saying, well, based on RBI, I don't have to go into this drum because I've already inspected it 7 times in the last 9 years. It hasn't done anything. I don't need to get into it. Pretty soon operations they're like, what? You don't have to go into it? Well, we got to get everything out. I said, dude, I don't have, from a mechanical integrity standpoint, I don't need to get in that drum. If you want to get in that drum, you justify it. Then the onus is on that.
Yeah, that's when things kind of, if you're not managing the communications right, there could be a lot of misunderstandings, right?
Yes.
And I've seen before where turnaround after turnaround, they keep wanting to go back inside of this equipment, claiming it's because of wet H2S potential damage. And it's really just because operations wanted to get in there, but nobody fully understood that. And so that's another great thing, right, about RBI is now you can document all this stuff and
Exactly.
you can have the justification at your fingertips.
Right.
And you've got the critical logic path that you can use to talk with maintenance about and talk with operations about, and here's why. And then maybe if you've got a good program in place, you can say, okay, but if you don't want to do it, sign this.
Exactly. Yeah. That's what deferrals are all about. I mean, you don't want to get into it. Here's the deferral. But
That's right.
And inspectors have, as an inspector, you got the option not to sign the deferral, push it up the chain.
That's right.
Mm-hmm. What do you think of the whole deferral concept and having to push it up the chain? I mean, have you right? I mean,
yeah,
gives you the ability to sit there and say, I'm not comfortable with this, and have somebody else have to work its way up on the signature
right.
line.
The thing about deferrals is as long as the inspector does his due diligence up front, we need to get this piece of equipment. And okay, we can't get to it. Operations and maintenance say we need to defer this piece of equipment. What at that point, then the inspector and the engineer look at it and say, what can I do non-intrusively and get all the documentation put together to where I can say, I can sign this deferral. Mm-hmm. So you gather external inspection, phased array, whatever else you can do, automated UT, you gather all the information you can and you get it all put together and you document it with your deferral. So it starts with your inspector. If it's a low enough level deferral, the inspector, he said, you know what? We've done all this inspection. I don't feel comfortable. So push it up to the chief. The chief, if he looks at it, says, yeah, we still need internal by code. We can push it off 6 months. Maybe he'll sign it and you can move the deferral, stop the deferral right there. That's fine. But if you can't, and he still doesn't feel comfortable, you can't get enough external inspection. You can't get enough backing. You know what? Chief doesn't have to sign it. Give it to the plant manager. At that time, there's a discussion say, look, Mr. Plant Manager, I've done all of this inspection and, to get us to where we could push off 6 months, either you feel comfortable with it or you don't feel comfortable with it, but I'm not signing it. And I can tell you, Plant Manager, he's the next level. He may not feel comfortable signing either. So you know what? You push it up to corporate. It takes it out of his hands. And, eventually somebody's going to say you either inspect it or we're going to move with the deferral. So it's a pretty good tool. It starts putting the onus where it really needs to be. So 6 months, it might not be bad, but if you're trying to push a year, hey, it might get a little sketchy sometimes.
Turnaround's pushing 3 years.
Yes. And I've had one piece of equipment one time where my inspector wouldn't sign it. I wouldn't sign it. And I advised the plant manager not to sign it. He wouldn't. And it went to corporate and they ended up signing it. But, they're the ones that took on their responsibility and it took all the weight off of our shoulder. So, and I'm as you're talking about that because I'm just running a deferral procedure for the plant I'm trying to help out right now. It's in the process of getting approved. I'm sure right now. That's one fun thing that I'm doing now as a consultant or whatever. Is just I'm helping write a lot of procedures, and then train it on procedures. It's one thing to write a procedure, and then dump it on, but you got to take that procedure and then you got to start training people. I like another one I just wrote. It's the injector plug mix point. So I'm going to put together a PowerPoint presentation and pictures of showing what happens if you get your injection plug in a wrong spot. How crucial it is. So. And I'm going to present that training to the entire refinery. I want the operators to know about it. I want the mechanics to know about it. How important it is to get that injection coil right where you want it. And inspect it. That's what it's all about.
Yep.
You mentioned PowerPoint. Do you find PowerPoint and the ability to put pictures as opposed to going and having a conversation with somebody provides a better training communication, or have you found something else that you like better than PowerPoints and pictures?
Yeah, PowerPoint's just a little tool. Mm-hmm. You can put the pictures together and you put a little bit of dissertation there. But the biggest thing is you put a little bullet and you don't read directly after your PowerPoint. You might have your bullet items minor and you expand on it and you really get into it, verbally with the folks and explain to them what's going on. Show them the picture and then really talk about it. Yeah. PowerPoint's just a small tool. You can sit there and act all you want, but if you can get a PowerPoint, show them a picture. So like like the back end of a T or elbow that's corroding like the dick is because wrong injection well, it tells a heck of a story. Pictures tell a heck of a story.
They do.
Yeah.
I find when I give training classes, honestly, the feedback that we get is the stories, the anecdotes
Yeah.
are the best. And I find that the class
Yeah.
engages the most when everybody else's starts. It's usually like day 2, day 1, everybody's feeling out the whole situation. Day 2 for us in our larger courses, it's everybody starts opening up. Maybe they've had dinner together, they know each other. That's when you really see the engagement and a lot more happen.
Right.
So yeah.
You know, and samples. I did a presentation at one of the summits on HF Alky corrosion on lower E versus higher E. And I had a couple samples where I just showed, I mean, one side was threaded like you couldn't believe. I mean, it was, but then the other side was almost full thickness. And it was, because of the highest percentage of lower E versus higher E. And one side grew more than the other. And you take that sample, pass it around, it opens people's eyes. And then you show an x-ray and say, here's the x-ray, that piece of pipe.
My smart ass, I'd come in with one, hold it in my hand, and then I would hold an empty hand and say, here's the other.
Yeah, there you go.
With HF,
Yeah.
Here it is. Here's the other one. It's gone. It's completely gone. Yeah.
Do you think HF Alky units are, they present a lot of challenges for the inspector, Terry?
Yeah. Put it this way. An inspector has an HF Alky in it. It's the same as having at least 3 process yards because of all the special emphasis programs you got to go on between flange inspection, lower E, 100% component, then your general inspection. It's all the stuff that you got to do. That's equivalent to 3 yards.
Yeah. And then we've got all those new rules around, if you're thinking of doing RBI on one of these units, there's extra rules, right?
Exactly. It was put to me one time very, very well. Our industry, we got to be careful with everything that we do. We can have fires in crude units. We can have fires in copers and burn things down and blow things up. But if you have one major failure in an HF Alky, that can not only devastate your local facility, that could put your whole company under. Look what happened to that company in Philadelphia.
Yeah, PES is a perfect example of that one.
And that's why that executive leadership guy said, take care of your Alkies. The other stuff we can deal with.
Do you think they're worth the trouble?
Yeah.
When you're experienced, do you think, why don't people, like, with all the extra effort and all the extra stuff you have to go through, should we keep building HF plants or should we just move to sulfuric?
No, my personal opinion, I think HF is a better way to go. When you start dealing with sulfuric, then you got to transport, you got to regenerate it so much more. You're exposing people, on the other end. And you're still corroding stuff. HF it's very dangerous, but you got to respect it. I've often told a lot of people I'd rather do 2 turnarounds at an HF Alky than 1 at a coker. I respect HF Alkys. I've never had a problem with them, but you got to know what you're looking for and work it that way.
Does that mean you don't respect cokers? I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Just kidding.
That's one of those gotcha test questions.
Cokers are just, they're everything big, bulky, and filthy. They're just nasty.
They make a lot of money though.
They do. And when things go bad, I mean, in a coker, it gets ugly real quick. So
yeah, you've had some experience there, it sounds like.
Yeah, a little bit. I was an assistant fire chief for 25 years at my first refinery, so I've fought a lot of fires too.
Would you say that HF, behind that HF, I'm going to call it a boil. You were calling them blisters, but that sounds like a boil to me.
Blister, yeah.
What would be another cool, another highlight? When you talk to doctors and you're like, oh, I had such a great day. I had, all these crazy, terrible things that happened for other people. But for you, from an inspection standpoint, what were some other really cool things that you found that, other people might be a little scared of, but that you look at and you're like, man, that was a really cool thing from an inspection standpoint?
In our gas plant, off our camp cracker, we had 2 exchanges off our, it was I think it's a Dubuque tower, overhead condensers, and we found H2S cracking all over this stuff, all over the shell. It open cracking on the ID surface. It was
Wow.
really cool. It did destroy it. We ended up having to replace those 2 shells. Another time found one of hydrogen blisters in a bullet tank. That was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Laminations, found a lot of laminations, a lot of dirty steel. You know, when you're out there as a young UT and shooting UT on a bullet tank, you come across a lamination that it's 5 foot in diameter. You know, you're starting to freeze down. Then you get on the inside and you say, "Oh, if you find out just a lamination." Those are kind of cool things. They're nothing like finding cracking in the vessel for the first time when you go wet mag. That's always pretty fun. You know, it's always exciting. Oh yeah, we found cracking. You know, and you're so excited as an inspector, you found some kind of damage mechanism, and your management is going like, "You know, why are you so excited? You know, you realize what you're doing to us." Yeah. Oh shit.
Was that how you found the cracks in that exchanger? Was wet mag, or were they big enough you could actually see them?
Yes.
Oh gosh.
Yeah. I'll tell you another really, really bad discovery we had. Did our coker unit? Yeah. This is why I love cokers. We had ammonium bisulfite corrosion. We were running the top part of our fractionator too low temperature, and we were getting ammonium bisulfite corrosion. So what ended up happening is we got into the top of the tower, and we did have a 405 stainless steel liner here. Well, that was gone. It ate that to the dickens. We ate the shell up like crazy. We ended up going back in and having to do weld buildup with that WSI weld overlay, and then put more liner apart, you know, and reline that. And then, oh man, another one, ochre again. I pushed the issue because below the oil tray, the 25th tray on the fractionator tower to coker. I said, you know, I really need to inspect the bottom of this tower. And it's got lined with coke. I want it cleaned out. I want to sandblast it and get it cleaned that way I get a good inspection of the shell. And thank goodness we did, because we got it all cleaned out. And pretty soon I got a caller over the radio and said, "Hey, McLane, you may want to come over here and take a look at this." So, you know, here's a piece of the 405 liner in the bottom of the fractionator coker, and split. It's a roadblock flatted. It split off, and it allowed product to get back in there, just eat on that carbon steel shell. And we were within less than an eighth of an inch of pulling through on the bottom of that car. And if we wouldn't have cleaned it and sandblasted it, we never would have found that. We'd have had a hole through it and probably a fire. It's one of those things where, you know, you got to keep pushing for the right inspection.
Yep. That's that ownership piece again.
It's things like that where when you hear that radio caller and said, "Hey, McLane, we need you to come down here and take a look at this." I said, "What do you got?" "You just need to come down here." As soon as you hear that, you know. That happened to me in our Amy unit too. I wanted a degas an area on the tower. Well, for some reason, our post heat treat contractor got crosswired and said, "No, we're not going to degas. This is the bottom third tower." They did a full-blown postal heat treat of a section. Well, you know what happens then? We wrinkled the tower, and it tipped it a little bit. And they said, "You might want to come down here." I said, "What do you got?" And says, "You just need to come down and take a look." And well, next thing you know, we're shooting UTs, measuring bulges and wrinkles, and sending it off to fitness for service. And it's a big deal.
The metal. So let me just, for those who are listening that maybe don't totally understand, like me. So you heat treated the bottom section and just a straight cut off of the temperature. And when it cooled, it contracted and created a wrinkle, literally like a wrinkle.
It was the bottom third of the tower, and it was almost half. There's like about an 8-foot section of this tower where all we wanted to do is a little degas. You know, I think we were adding a nozzle, or I can't remember exactly what we're doing now. But when they put it into pulsar heat treatment, and mind you, there was no support for this tower.
Right.
We had no intention of taking it to 1,100 degrees, like we're almost 1,200 degrees. We're only going to take it to 600. So when you take it up to 1,200 degrees,
it's a lot softer.
With the top, with as much weight of that tower, and you only post heat, that post heat is on one side of the vessel. It just kind of wrinkled it. It was kind of nice little. I tipped it over a little bit.
Wow.
Makes for a real bad day.
Wow. Okay. Good thing it wasn't any windier that day.
Oh yeah. Not that the wind was to shine in Wyoming.
Not at all.
No.
Nah. Yeah. Well, Terry, what would you tell our listeners about the future. What your thoughts are about the future, what your thoughts are about what to watch out for, what to not abandon, what to do, from a positive perspective. What would you have to tell them?
Now that I've been on this side of the business for a while, I'm finding out there's a lot of companies out there that don't have MI programs. A lot of our smaller companies out there need to pay attention to the inspection, mechanical integrity area, and get involved with it, and make sure that you get a good mechanical integrity program going, because it pays dividends. That's what keeps your plant running. That's what keeps you out of trouble. But whether it be regulators, whether it be auditors, or whether it be failures, support your MI programs. Learn, and for the inspectors, learn the codes and learn welding. Get into everything, and make sure that you understand that stuff. Oil business, whether a lot of other people like it or not, I think the oil business can be around for another 50 to 100 years. So still, we need to take care of it. I mean, there's not enough out there, not alternative energy is not going to take it over anytime soon, right? For sure.
Yeah.
Even if it does, there's enough derivatives of right. I mean, all the plastics. It might just mean if alternative fuels and alternative methods do come around, we still haven't found a better way to make plastics. So it just might mean that we are repiping our processes.
Yeah.
To do that, but the facilities themselves, I mean, they're not going away for a while.
No. And now companies need to embrace all the new technology they can. I mean, whether it's UT or new, computed RT and digital RT and RBI and CCDs, they keep up with the times, keep up with technology, because it's important. Now, if you're not keeping up with technology, you're falling behind, and that's not a good thing to do.
It's moving so fast these days too that it's easy to be left behind.
Oh yeah, darn right it is.
Yep, and there's so much now that you can, not just technology to take advantage of, but sometimes people might try to use technology to take advantage of us. Pretty pictures, right? Because we're so visual, but I think it's still important to understand what's the substance behind the pictures. Whether it's 500,000 A scans or whatever, what's behind the picture, that's important. We can't just settle for something that's pretty, Yep,
exactly. There was one other question in the prep stuff that she kind of threw at me, and I got kidding. That man says, when it comes to your professional success, who do you think you owe the most? Man, I would have to say my wife, for putting up with almost 45 years of a lot of overtime, traveling, turnarounds, long hours. It's not only tough on the guy who's doing the inspecting, but it's tough on his family and his wife, because they're the ones left home when we're working all these long hours, 40 and 50 and 60 days in a row without a day off. I mean, they don't do that anymore, but back in the day, there was no such thing as a day off on a tour out here. When that plant came down, you were out there working 7 days a week, 14 hours a day. That's just the way it was.
What's your wife's name, Terry?
My wife is Reba. She put up with me for almost 45 years now. She's been nominated for Savior.
Hats off to Reba for putting up with you for all this time, right?
That's the darn truth, I'll tell you. Yep.
Yeah. It's all about, having a good spouse really, really helps with a lot of those.
A lot of understanding has to be out there.
It's a team.
You get somebody like me who retired once, and you float for retirement. Last year, we're watching an episode of Landman, and they're talking about, about him loving his job. Sam Milley looked at old Billy Bob Thornton and said, "It's not a job for you. It's a freaking addiction." And my wife looked at me. She goes, "Oh, they just described you." So, I reckon I resemble that part.
A lot of us do, Terry.
But there's a lot of cool people that helps me along. It's I've known Greg for since 1992 when we were first met. Like I said, Tommy Wozniak, he was the first one to come in inspection. Garrett Buchheimer's taught me more about corrosion, and with working with Garrett on numerous items. It's just a lot of cool things out there. John Reynolds. I mean, years ago when I was first starting in ICP, we were sitting there going through some stuff and we're going through a couple of test questions. All of a sudden, John Reynolds just stopped dead in the middle and says, Terry, he said, you're an inspector. He said, what do you think about this? What works in the field? You tell us. He said, us engineers going to sit here and make all these real go ones. I want to know what works for you in the field. I thought, man, for John to stop everything and say, and ask for an inspector's opinion, that was pretty cool. Yeah,
nice.
And that's the way John was. And then, because he wanted a well-rounded look at everything. It's not just one group that has all the opinion. It's a collective bargain of everybody. Inspectors, engineers, it takes all of us.
Yes, it does.
And I'll never forget, I was doing a course at Equity one year, and it was Phil Henry. Him and Matt were teaching the class, Matt Caserta. And Phil Henry says, hey, McLane, he says, are you involved with API? And this is before no, he says, are you involved with API? He says, when you get back home, he says, you call this guy and you start showing up for meetings. He says, I'll be looking for you. So I did, 15 years later, here I am still involved in that. That's how I got started.
That's great.
Wow.
Great. All because of Phil. And, and then to this day, Phil and I are great friends. Phil's an awesome guy.
Oh yeah. Uncle
Yep.
Phil. That's what
Yep.
a lot of us call him Uncle Phil. He's a lot of
Yep.
fun.
It's a business. It's a great way to make a living. It's very challenging.
Yeah. Well, I guess part of Reba's consideration too in supporting you was enjoying the life that you could give her through the job you had.
Yeah. It's,
And your kids,
Yeah. It's, got both my kids through college and gave us, they provided a good living for all of us. And, it's, pretty cool. You can't complain.
Anything else, Terry, that you'd like to talk about we haven't covered already? Is there anybody else you want to say thanks to?
No, I said thanks to the biggest people that, they're out there. The Phil Henrys and John Reynolds and Gary Buchheim's, meeting you, Greg.
Don't forget Reba.
My wife, of course, she's my biggest supporter. And, many hours of studying and stuff like that. And she put up with me. So that's a cool thing.
Well, thanks, Terry, for joining us. Brandon, did you have anything else you wanted to ask Terry?
No, this has been great. I love doing these. I really do. I like just getting to meet folks and talk and just kind of learn. And I got tons of notes here to things I learned. So I appreciate it, Terry.
Good. Yeah, if you got any other ideas or questions, hit me up and I'll share whatever I got.
Yeah, appreciate
Yes,
it.
sir.
Appreciate
Thank you,
it.
Terry. Thanks a million.
Thank you for listening to Upon Further Inspection, a Mechanical Integrity podcast. This episode was co-created by Inspectioneering and Core Solutions. Our producers are Nick Schmoyer, Jocelyn Christie, and Jeremiah Wu. This podcast is for informational purposes only and does not constitute legal or professional advice. Listeners should seek their own qualified advisors for guidance. If you enjoyed this episode, please join us next time wherever you listen to your podcasts. Until then, stay safe and stay informed.